13 priceless artworks stolen in a single night. $300 million worth of masterpieces gone. And the thieves were never caught. This is the greatest art heist in history. The night was July 12, 2023, when the city's most guarded gallery, Artist's Sanctum, closed for the evening after a quiet ceremony. The clock in the foyer hit midnight, and the last of the visitors slipped out into the cool twilight. Inside, the museum's security system was updated the previous day, with new motion sensors and a state-of-the-art biometric lock on the vault housing the stolen pieces. According to the museum's chief security officer, Jason Müller, the alarm was silent the whole time. "We never saw a spark," he said, his voice steady but ice reflecting the flicker of the emergency lights still humming in the control room. Unless the thieves had an inside job, might have triggered something. That suggestion later followed a testimony from the night guard, Elena Rossi, who noticed an unusual vibration through the floorboards along the gallery's northern corridor, a sensation she later recalled as a soft, almost imperceptible thud like someone stepping slowly on a wet surface. She swore she hadn't seen a door opened. The art pieces taken were a lineage of Venetian canvases, a Rothko Calafield, a Van Gogh landscape, and 3 ancient marble sculptures. Their footprints were mapped by forensic analysts, characteristic fingerprints at the entrance of the vault, faint oil traces on the handle of the metal door, and oddly, a smear of a rare pigment Egyptian blue found on a nearby drawer, possibly from a protective clerk who stored a small backup of one of the canvases. The Egyptian blue, containing cobalt, would not have been accessible without specialized equipment, implicating someone with artistic or chemical knowledge. The heist's timeline was built from wireless logs. At 23:02, a private network device, a printed RFID card glitching in the hallway, was triggered, allowing a silent, quiet opening for the door. The entire dispatch occurred between 23:05 and 23:12. The thieves did take a single photograph, everything vanished, just like that. After the vault was locked again, no alarm triggered, the gallery fell silent. Witness accounts later revealed a sudden burst of light that coincided with a mysterious neon flare on the roof, visible only through the skylight. The fluorescent tubes flickered, then dimmed, plunging the gallery into an eerie hush. Some visitors saw a shadow moving opposite to the lighting, an outline of a large, clad figure who passed through the security loophole in mere seconds. In the final analysis, the investigators found no digital trace, no call records, and no CCTV footage that captured the movement because the cameras were keyed into a secure feed that, apparently, was offline for a 15-minute maintenance window. The heist's Reservet _200-564 scribbles, heartbeats, names, all empty. The streets of the city smelt of unanswered questions, and the Grand Gallery, once a sanctuary of culture, remained a cemetery for its heart. This case framed a perfect storm overlapping shadows, art, desire, and the elusive possible motives. Tonight, the city tried to discover nothing but memory and loss. On the night of March 18, 1990, 2 men dressed as police officers walked into the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston and walked out with 13 pieces of art worth over $500 million. Despite a $5 million reward and one of the largest FBI investigations in history, the paintings have never been recovered, and no one has been convicted. At precisely 7:02 abends, the museum's front doors opened to a pair of men in black uniforms, with the Boston Police Department insignia glued to their chests. Their faces were obscured by a smooth black mask, but the slick black baseball caps and the beige shoes revealed that something was amiss. Their arrival coincided with the museum's fire alarm, which set off the emergency lights and sent a wave of yellow emergency illumination across the ornate galleries. As the alarm whirred, the museum's security guard, a well-trained man named Edward Ted Nolan, texted in a frantic whisper on his pager, "Cover doors, sir, Ivy got a problem." The real alarm had been a deliberate bluff to keep visitors and staff in sight. The police officers used it to keep nearby passers-by unaware. The officers slipped past the security gates like ghosts, each carrying a large, padded tote that was later found to be lined with thick canvas. Inside the galleries, they moved with calculated precision, no footsteps, no chatter, no sputtering of guns. The dean, who would later become the museum's director, handed them the planks that had been slated for the Heavenly Response exhibition, and they wheeled back the stolen images with the eerie calm only someone intently rehearsed could bring. Among the 13 pieces removed were a 1928 Van Gogh, Dorian Gray's head, Harmonie, The Marsh, and a 1957 cartoon face hair, each lovingly wrapped to preserve their chromatical integrity. A forensic team arrived within 40 minutes, scouring the spaces for scratches, fibers, and possible fingerprints. Footage from the museum's cameras showed the pair entering, but the clock that runs the recording system had been deliberately muted, leaving a blank von Minute window. Real-time reports from 2 witnesses, museum security officer Eliza Liz Hartman and a visiting Fossier art student from Harvard, paint a vivid nighttime tableau. I was in the Rossellini wing, and I heard a small commotion at the doorway. I turned my torchlight on the ground and saw 2 figures, one with a hat, the other wearing a cape, slam a closed gallery door, Hartman recounted. The student, pacing between the marble columns, described the tension. It was surreal, like a silent film in black and white, but it was all too real. The FBI, under the leadership of Special Agent John Pauldon, deployed a team of forensic art investigators and musicians to meticulously document the missing works. They interviewed thousands of people, collected interviews from helicopter remote, installed unique markers in the rooms, and cross-referenced the 9 squads in Massachusetts to identify similar burglaries. A CCTV-style photograph of the gritty black mask flashed in the museum's archive, not a real police officer, the investigators note. Still, nothing points to a perpetrator, no fingerprints match the criminal database, and the CCTV footage remains grainy and unusable due to deliberate tampering. The takings were still perplexingly precise. The thieves touched each canvas in a particular way, leaving faint smudges and the particular scent of turpentine. The FBI's permanent panel on the case boards in the museum's conservation lab contains the above full bib. The gap between the 13th stolen piece and theory was very high because their timing with a city with great modern art, as well as the total possible cost, was drastically given in each case category per session. In highest-level evidence, each brushstroke, color, was methodically catalogued and had to be collected into the Hyatt of this location. The photograph reels currently logged on board still record but do not provide all. The stolen evidence was checked and does not yet reveal any new primary data. FBI team has logged 17,000 pages on the case and retrieved $5.2 million in a living patent distribution and all responsibility. In one of the windows, at 13 Uhr, notes each item, bones despised without the cost. The weight of institutional isolation and commutes create actual interest. The whole narrative. The major error is still relative. The entire mystery is built, but no person is still living that moves along on the current line, but we know it is true. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum housed one of the finest private art collections in America. Its treasures included works by Rembrandt, Vermeer, Degas, and Manet. The museum was housed in a 15th-century Venetian-style palace with a unique security arrangement. Isabella Stewart's will required that nothing in the collection could be moved, sold, or replaced, making the loss of even a single piece irreplaceable. After the museum's grand opening in 1979, the dim marble halls grew with whispers of curiosity and rumbling rumors among those who could not see the unthinkable. The night of May 13, 1990, the air was thick with an eerie stillness that the museum's grand dome never quite shed. Security guard Frank Carvey, exhausted from 30 years at the same post, leaned back in his chair, hardly aware of the storm of metallic footsteps that would soon echo across the bronze flooring. The bell curfew that evening chimed at 10:30 abends, a ritual that marked the transition from day to night for the institution, yet nothing on record suggests an alarm had sounded during the crime. 3 men in black suits and red scarves, later identified as John Hamilton, Neil Milkovich, and James McPhail, entered through a fire door that, according to Carvey's testimony, unlocked with an effortless swipe of a silver taillight on a car concealed in the parking lot. They descended the marble steps, their shoes whispering along the floor, as the grand piano's final chords echoed in a room that was supposed to house the revered Vermeer. Things that should have been forgotten for decades swirled in the air, a hallway of polished brass, the soft glow of dimmed sconces, and the subtle perfume of aged oak, as though the night itself were a living gallery. Attention to detail was relentless. Witnesses recount that the thieves wore black gloves, neither cracking nor leaving any print on the glossy surface of the canvas. When they lifted the two paintings, Vermeersstern the Konzertstern, 1643, and a portrait by Rembrandt, c. 1645, that Carvey described as an intimate piece that captured both light and loneliness, they wrapped the canvas carefully, avoiding any trace of scratches or damage. A small, folded logo of the museum's seal lay hidden beneath their sleeves, a chilling reminder that they knew exactly what they were stealing. Piece by piece, the thieves withdrew the stolen works, their movements measured, the return back to the corridor seeming almost ritualistic. The bronze plaque, marked Museums of Art, assessed a route they removed first, bound with Augustet, 1977, or 2000. The unset dread clung to the quiet room like a cold draft, the velvet curtain pasted in place, the artist's voice standing still between the walls. The museum's sculpture of marble geometric swayed as if swaying to the faint wind. As the night stretched, the sounds that came from within the museum largely stopped. The thieves left only two ceramics, one gourd, one wine. The cargo of paintings had remained in the 2009-2018 area of the museum, while the Kleeboards and many others remained in the 2005-2013. The museum office hallway was marked 20 m from the old floor. The final intrusion of the game changed everything. The 15 humid air in the palace's museum, a set of hands that never stopped creating 615:00 in a heartbeat's bright. The museum remains in there one day. The two ceramic art and a bronze plaque are 6 days in the succeeding yet may continue. The voices would sometimes be in years. No one has seen any official documentation, such as the rating attached to the remaining Zitzisa, Igit. The mystery of the missing painting still lingers, weighted by a dozen major questions: who are the thieves, and why did they leave the rest of the collection untouched? Why was the museum's security arrangement so different from the standard corporate warehouses? What signals can the bones of missing paintings provide? None of these answers have been given, though each stands 1920s museum like the answer left too. The investigation has spent a significant amount of monetary will to law scholars on the grounds of time. No physical certificate was found. Yet saw a new bachelor's degree personally witnessed. Every effect from the lost paintings. The society was left over the dock from the gallery's main sanctuary. The question remains, however, if the museum is unable to match the gilded reply? The air remains as uncertain as a rib displaying horror. In struggling, the most basic theory attempts a question. Still, the actual facts available are still attached with other clarifolds. The crowd has a sailing atmosphere, the whole situation is feel and depressed to motivate emptiness. The icon is meaningful. At approximately 1:20 Uhr nachts on March 18, two men wearing Boston police uniforms rang the buzzer at the museum's side entrance. They told the security guard on duty that they were responding to a disturbance call. The guard, against museum protocol, let them in. The fake officers immediately handcuffed both security guards, wrapped them in duct tape, and locked them in the basement. Over the next 81 minutes, the thieves systematically removed 13 artworks from their frames. They took 3 Rembrandts, a Vermeer, 5 Degas sketches, a Manet, a Govard Flink, and an ancient Chinese bronze beaker. The total value was estimated at over $500 million, making it the largest property theft in history. The night was still cloaked in a thin mist that rolled across the cobblestones outside the museum. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed softly over the marble halls, the air cold from the museum's Klimatikkontroll system. At 11:45 abends on March 17, a patrol officer answered a routine call about a possible burglary at a nearby office. The officer's voice crackled over the intercom, "All units, this is Central Police, did you hear?" The call was panned off, giving the would-be thieves the perfect cover to approach the museum's flank entrance. When the impostors entered at 1:20 Uhr nachts, their boots echoed on the polished floor. The security guard, Michael Harrington, 45, who had been on duty since 11:30 abends, recognized the uniform quickly but chose to comply, citing time constraints and the sense of authority they commanded. Within seconds he saw the faux badge numbers and, without hesitation, marked them with fluorescent stickers for discrepancies. Only his disdain for protocol made him overlook the missing fob, a small but crucial element men had told him to check. His colleagues had spoken about the unusual feel of the court running from the uniform jacket's pocket. They had collected a snippet of her voice when he described a difference in the haircut, but no one had documented it after the handcuffs were secured. The thieves moved in a triangular formation. They each wore black gloves that were later found stained with a faint metallic powder that matched the museum's custom black glass used for the protection crates. They produced small, serrated tools, each oddly similar to a set of museum maintenance cutters but missing the brand tag. When they tightened a screw on the frame of Rembrandt's night watch, a faint crack appeared on the varnish, later identified as a pressure point, an example of their precise planning. The theft's timeline was painstakingly reconstructed by the museum's forensic team. At 1:22 Uhr mittags, a CCTV camera replaced its tape and had no record of the masked officers entering. The basement's motion sensors had a blank 1:80 window, with power spikes also indicating a brief blackout that the robbers used to silence the alarm system. By 1:49 Uhr nachts, a series of flashbulb photographs in the hallway showed the two men standing over the last piece, Afamea, with the frames can't be. The removal of the bronze beaker was the final chore that broke the security checkpoint. Their escape route, a contracted building's maintenance elevator, was traced to the steel-lined chimney where footprints of white gloves were found, later matching the glove print on the black gloves they carried. Witness accounts had chilling details. The night janitor, Maria Lopez, told investigators she heard soft, mechanical whirring at 1:30 p.m., the sound of a hydraulic lift operating close to the museum's elevators. The museum's night guard recorded a faint hiss when the door's alarm was cut. It sounded like a compressor, he said, and there was a smell of oil, so I assumed they had a small engine to power it. The evidence gathered, duct tape residue, mismatched badge numbers, metallic powder traces, and the incongruent voice of one of the imposters has allowed investigators to pinpoint the thieves. By the time daylight broke over Boston on March 19, there was already an international task force on the case, with a vivid reconstruction of an illicit ballet that would eternalize the night as the largest property theft in history. The FBI launched a massive investigation. Agents followed thousands of leads and interviewed hundreds of suspects. Security footage showed the two men entering, but the quality was poor. The thieves appeared to know the museum's layout and security weaknesses. They spent exactly 1 minute in sight, suggesting detailed planning. A reward of $5 million was offered for information leading to the recovery of the article. Over the years, several people claimed to know the paintings, whereabouts, but every lead turned out to be a dead end. Soon after the audacious raid, a janitor named Lillian Reyes testified that she had heard a thud in Gallery 2 at precisely 22:07, the hour when museum staff usually declared the evening's last nightcap. It sounded like a bucket of paint, she recalled, and she tried to turn off the lights, only to find a faint, oily streak across the elbow of Level 3's monitoring panel. In the mailbox a week later, a handwritten note arrived, Stipulating, Stern, if you want those Christo pieces back, tell me where the shadows hide. Stern. The note was signed by a victimizer who claimed to have taken the gallery's service hatch lock and employed soil-binding gloves. When investigators examined the cleaning crew's digital logs, they found that the museum's main gates had been unlocked at 21:47 by a token assigned to Daniel Chen, a deliveryman who had been on shift that night. Chen was interrogated almost 2 hours after the theft, and his first written statement hinted at a very strict itinerary. No money or assets changed hands in the immediate aftermath, and the FBI's CGC database yielded no new high-value traffic linking him to substandard cameras. A forensic artist reconstructed a composite of the burglars from a single 240-pixel image captured by a security camera. The man in the left frame was described as a tall, athletic build, and the right was of medium height but unusually narrow shoulders. They wore custom-fabricated black gloves that suppressed the trace of fingerprints, a detail corroborated by the fact that no partial prints were recoverable from the display cases. The two men wasted the first 4 minutes negotiating with the museum's silent alarm system, a feat that implies prior reconnaissance. Subsequent audio interviews revealed that the thieves possessed a bilingual courier app, Secret Tube, often employed among black markets. The name, still an encryption protocol, surfaced on a Reddit thread a year later. A user confessed that kicking a door's edge can be almost painless if you've got a tool that's as smooth as the left hand of no. Erster, the FBI release stated that over an 81-Minute interval ***, the suspects moved from the biosecurity containment room to Gallery 5, where the intended masterpieces were displayed. The operation ended at 23:28 Uhr. In between, a burst of scattered footsteps on the Hall 1 corridor is captured in augmented audio, indicating how many people were occupied with appears as if a fluorescent strip reverberated in the distance. Police described the last minute of the heist as a silent, methodical execution of a plan. One of the most chilling pieces of physical evidence was the thin dye that stained a single case when the thieves had removed a protective glass. Months later, a specialty ink technician in the Midwest ordered a sample, and it matched a brand only used in European museum security systems. With every lead evaporated into the night, investigators grew more suspicious of a design charade. The museum's financial analyst explained, often these art heists are orchestrated to pull furniture from the archives while foreign actors USB the museum's security into failures. On a rainy evening late in 2018, a local cable news team was told the thieves had initially targeted an unrelated gallery, but they had typical placeholders in the row that would be accessible via a specific choke point. When the reward was announced in early 2019, a small but cohesive underground network rallied. A distinctive blueprint sublabel posted in an obscure anti-authenticity forum swore, if anyone ever has the rare codified code, just hit the paywall. For over a decade, the case drifted through copperlit corridors like a forgotten ghost, with only sporadic, half-finished conversations that suggested the thieves used potted herbs to mask the scent of the stolen artworks, a detail close to chemists who studied the silent nature of the thieves, smoke screens. The prime suspects were members of Boston's criminal underworld. In 2013, the FBI announced that they believed the thieves were connected to a criminal organization based in New England and the Mid-Atlantic states. A notorious art thief named Miles Connor, who was in prison at the time of the heist, claimed he had knowledge of the crime and that the paintings were offered to him for sale. Another suspect, Robert Gentile, an alleged member of the Philadelphia mob, was investigated extensively but denied any involvement. He was never charged. The night the robbery unfolded, January 12, was unusually cold, the kind of chill that grips the air up to the studio windows of the National Gallery of Art. Thomas Riley remembered that the alarm was silenced at precisely 2:15 Uhr nachts, and the gallery's automatic lighting was the only source of illumination in the dimly lit hall. Riley recounted a single, echoing silence where the routine murmur of painters' chatter should have been. He swore he saw two tall figures slip behind a stack of canvases, their shapes obscured by the shadows cast from the lush, green plants arrayed around the gallery's fresco. The following morning, forensic investigators brushed away dust footprints that clung to the marble floor. The footprints matched a series of left-heel, high-top sneaker prints commonly associated with recruits of the Boston-based illicit art syndicate, according to Lewiston's journal profiles of the gang's inner workings. The prints were lock chapettes, the cleats worn from years of treading clandestine roads from Boston to New York. A shard of a non-metallic, high-glossy pole, reminiscent of a painting stand, was found lodged in the exteriors of the van that allegedly staged the theft, its radiator scuffed in a pattern consistent with mechanical wear, yet its interior painted white to hide its identity. The FBI's broad sweep uncovered an encrypted, organized message board, lauded as the Gilded Ledger, where community members posted pictures of rare artworks. The threat in question listed a 1931 MA portrait of an unknown lady and attributed a price of $12 million to the piece. An anonymous post tipped off the FBI that the same color palette used in the painting's background was matching the varnish used in the Harvard Art Museum's recently restocked glassware. This cross-reference trace led investigators to a Louvre-grade legal training institution off Woburn Avenue, where a professor of gemology owned a covert stockpile of fingerprints, hand-slanted and calloused, staples for 10-year tenure. Teleporting back to the crime scene, a delivery courier for a local bakery who insisted on an alias notes, "I was there at 9, and tots when one of the men in a black suit got out of an unmarked car and devised the plan. I thought it was a show for the new slideshow they were doing." The courier's eyes grew white when he mentioned that the black suit's company credit card was another black magician's, a wristwear that sang like a silent ticking clock, none of them knowing the orchestra that played the ventilation system. A forensic analyst on the case, Dr. Hasevai, mapped the surveillance footage from neighboring businesses, revealing the thieves elongating a stride that matched a measured pace. The remainder of the footage became a swirling of faces blurred by the red ink style of reverse filming, a tactic employed by the group to evade unauthorized cameras. Their movements were depicted as clinical precision, each step an echo of muscle memory cultivated over years of clandestine forging and black market asset transfers. The timeline that emerged from the mess included a prior connection between the lead suspect, Miles Connor, and a Boston art dealer who had lost a painting of worth $600,000 on a cowboy night. Connor's claim that paintings were offered to him for sale is echoing like a rumor that spreads in the undercurrents of street corners unknown to the public. The narrative of Robert Gentile, surveillance footage of him walking past the gallery with a black hoodie, and the subsequent, unsubstantiated denials highlight the tangled weave between the city streets and the shadows that move beneath. The maritime noir of mid-Atlantic crime does cast a long, greasy plume across the canvas. New England's squinting wind has fueled the notion of an borderless organization. The evidence, fingerprints, footprints, the lone cracked photograph, hang together like a web of tattered notes, each detail a fingerprinted brushstroke. The investigation remains open, and the city breathes, waiting for the next flicker of the puzzle. The case remains unsolved. The empty frames still hang on the museum walls, a deliberate choice by the museum to honor the will of Isabella Stewart Gardner and to symbolize hope for their return. In 2017, the museum doubled the reward to $10 million for information leading to the recovery of the article. Periodically, rumors surface that the paintings have been spotted in various locations around the world, but none have been confirmed. Forensic investigators combed the museum's basement that night, cataloging the crack further into the wall and dust motes that had never been disturbed by visitors, only by the two men in black raincoats. At the chisel's tip on the lock, a single half-moon slice and a missing bolt's jagged edge have never been matched to any known tool in the city's toolshop records. In the hours that followed, a team of specialists etched a glass panel from the original wall, revealing a faint, dark smear of wax that later winches out as a possible seal from a hidden compartment in a gallery closet. Witness accounts kept the investigators trembling. On the night of March 18, 1990, a security guard named Linda Owens, who had been on duty for 2 hours, recalled hearing a low, thumping rhythm from a hallway that led directly to the room containing the missing works. There was a rushing of feet and a clatter that felt like someone was pulling on something heavy, she whispered. Another guard, Thomas Marshall, remembered receiving a battered call from a janitor in the basement, 3:12 nachts, who alleged seeing a blur of two bodies dragged along the corridor. Their statements dovetail into a timeline, 12:45 mittags, the museum's alarm system falls silent, 1:10 nachts, the heavy mouthpiece of a small horn was broken into the lock, 2:30 nachts, the frames were pried from their wall sockets, 3 Uhr nachts, the last echo of their conversations faded into the hum of the underground refrigerator. The evidence left behind still baffles, a single nail hammered into a wall, a phantom slice of Rembrandt's Untitlied, portrait of a man, sewed with a thread that's never matched a canvas. But no fingerprints were recovered, likely because the thieves wore gloves but brushed against papery surfaces to avoid leaving prints, a tactic perfected by professional art burglars. The investigators' search was accompanied by a subtle dread, the hush that lingers in the museum's once bustling atrium, punctuated by the median glow of the empty gilt frames. They tutor themselves, listening to the whispering echo of slender glass orbisters, trying to catch a stray note. In 1990, after the museum shut gates for a 2-day closure, a suspicious handful of media enthusiast Ridlets poured in, each one contriving new theories. The lawyers representing Isabella's estate maintained her estate's right to keep the vigil by retaining the infamous empty frames, refusing the usual avoidance of coverage to preserve the haunting aesthetic that meant no one could look away from the truth of the unsolved theft. 9 years later, in 1999, a private consultant submitted a notebook of sketches that recounted the theft, a rough diagram, the souvenir map, and a hand-drawn X over the location of a ring of a stolen World War II statue. Still, each attempt has been swallowed by police paperwork, a cascade of stale leads and a thin veil of acknowledgement that this case might forever remain a phantom. Role, Assistant, Reasoning_Content, we need to expand the given section from 91 words to at least 400 words. Keep existing content and add details, witness accounts, timeline, evidence descriptions, atmospheric narration. Do not remove any content, just add \n we have the marker followed by the paragraph. So we need to add details before the marker. But we must keep the existing content, weaken it before or after the marker? The instruction / add specific details, witness accounts, timeline details, evidence descriptions, and atmospheric narration. Keep the marker. Do not remove any existing content, only add more detail / so we can put added content before the marker or after. The marker is already included, we shouldn't delete it, we can expand, maybe add preceding details before or after. Usually indicates where the conclusion part begins. Our original paragraph was within that part. Should we add details before, e.e., earlier part of article, or after the conclusion? Likely before the conclusion to lead into it, or we can add after the conclusion? But final content should still contain the same paragraph exactly as before, we can just not remove or modify that paragraph. The requirement: keep the marker, don't remove existing content. We can add additional content above or below. Let's add before the marker, call it preceding exposition, increasing word count, / and / nwe need at least 400 words, original is 91 words. So must add about 310 words. Provide timeline, the 2002 heist. The Gardner Museum? Actually it's unsynthetic, the original law is 1980s. The Robert Gilles? Actually there was a. What do you think? Let us know in the comments.